This is the second part of my lecture on descriptive statistics, in which I'll talk about frequency distributions. Now we're going to see how we can collect some data to demonstrate a frequency distribution. So let's suppose that we want to investigate the number of bone scans done each day in the nuclear medicine department. By looking at the booking diary, we can see that on Monday we did 6 bone scans. So we record that on our record sheet. The next day, Tuesday, looking at the booking diary, we can count 1, 2, 3, 4 bone scans. So we record that on our sheet as well. The next day, Wednesday, we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 bone scans. And on the Thursday we find another 4 bone scans. Continuing the rest of the week, we find that on Friday we had 3 bone scans, the following Monday there were 6, Tuesday there were 5, Wednesday 4, Thursday 6, and Friday 6. So that's our record of the number of bone scans performed. So here is the data that we've just collected. The number of bone scans performed on 10 successive days we've found to be these numbers. The next thing we need to do is to produce a table of these frequencies. We know that we scan between 1 and 6 each day, and we're going to create some tally marks to count that. The first day we did 6 bone scans, and so we put a tally mark in under the 6. The next day there were 4 bone scans, we put a tally mark under the 4. Then 6 bone scans gives us another tally mark under the 6. 4, 3, 6, 5, 4, 6, 6. And the horizontal line through the tally marks under 6 indicates that we've completed a group of 5 in that square. Now we need to add up the tally marks in order to get the frequency. There were no tally marks for 1 each day, none for 2, 1 tally mark showing we did 3 bone scans on only 1 day, 3 tally marks for 4 a day, 1 for 5 a day, and a group of 5 for the 6 in a day. This is the frequency of how many days we achieved that number of bone scans. We're going to plot that as a frequency histogram like this, which shows the frequency of occurrence on the vertical axis against the number of bone scans each day on the horizontal axis. There were no days on which we did 1 bone scan, no days on which we did 2 bone scans, but there was 1 day on which we did 3 bone scans, so we have a block of 1 in that column. On 3 days we did 4 bone scans, so we have 3 blocks there. 1 day we did 5 bone scans, and on 5 days we did 6 bone scans, so we have 5 blocks in the final column. So the height of each block on this histogram shows how often, shows the frequency, in other words, of that number of bone scans in a day. That's the data that we're going to be analysing. We're going to describe this data using descriptive parameters, and there are various we could look at. The extent of the data, in other words the sample size, how many measurements we took, is given by n, the number of measurements. In this case 10 measurements, because we have 10 different days when we counted the number of bone scans. Then there are measures of central tendency, which show where the middle of the distribution tends to be. There are examples of the mode, the median and the mean, which we shall talk about. And there are measures of dispersion, the spread of the data from one side to the other. This can be measured by the range, or the interquartile range, or the standard deviation. Then there are measures of skewness, which show how skewed or asymmetric the data is. This particular data is rather skewed to the right. It's biased to high numbers, so it's not very symmetric. I won't actually be saying anything more about skewness in these talks, but in the next part of this lecture we'll talk about measures of central tendency, and in the one after that we'll talk about measures of dispersion. So that's the end of the second part of this talk.